My sister blamed me for crashing my dad's car, and my parents kicked me out at 16. 18 years later, they come back to sue me and take my house. But the judge left them speechless. I'm 34 years old. I work in logistics. And what I'm about to tell you is something that literally kept me awake for months. Although now, looking back, I think it was the best thing that could have happened to me because I finally closed a chapter that had been open since I was like 16. The thing is, my parents and my older sister Amber sued me recently. Yeah, you heard that right. They sued me trying to take my house, the house I bought with my own money after years of hard work, and all because they thought they were entitled to it just for being family. But let me start from the beginning, because to understand how we got to that point, you have to understand what it was like growing up in that family. And trust me, it wasn't pretty at all. For as long as I can remember, Amber was always my parents' golden child. You know, the one who never did anything wrong, the perfect one, the one who deserved everything. I, on the other hand, was the scapegoat, the one who was always to blame, for everything. Even when it was obvious I hadn't done anything. And I'm not exaggerating. Literally everything Amber did wrong ended up being my fault somehow. Amber broke a vase? Matthew pushed her. Amber got bad grades? Matthew distracted her. Amber came home late? Matthew should have taken better care of her. It didn't matter that I was 2 years younger than her. I was supposed to be responsible for her mistakes. My parents never, and when I say never, I mean never, punished her for anything. She could do whatever she wanted, and there was always an excuse, always a justification, while I got punished for things I hadn't even done. I remember perfectly when I was like 12, and Amber was 14. She stole $50 from my mom's wallet to buy I don't know what with her friends. I was in my room doing homework when I heard my mom scream that money was missing. I went down to see what was happening, and my dad grabbed me by the arm, really hard, and asked me where the money was. I told him I didn't know what he was talking about, that I hadn't taken anything, but he didn't believe me. They grounded me for a month. No going out, no video games, nothing. 2 weeks later, I found the evidence. I literally saw Amber with the things she had bought with that money, and when I told my parents, you know what they said? To stop blaming my sister. That I was being resentful. That she had saved that money from her allowance. Amber never got an allowance, neither did I, so it was obvious she was lying, but my parents didn't care. That was a pattern that repeated itself my whole life, basically. Amber could do whatever she wanted and I paid the consequences, or they just ignored me if I asked for anything. When Amber wanted piano lessons, they paid for them. When I asked to join the school soccer team, they said there was no money. When Amber wanted new clothes, they bought her everything she pointed at. When I needed shoes because mine were broken, they told me mine were still good. It wasn't just favoritism. It was like I didn't exist, except when they needed someone to blame. The worst came when I turned 16. Amber was 18 and had just gotten her driver's license. My dad had a 2005 Toyota Camry that he took care of like it was his baby. That car was his pride and joy. He always washed it on Sundays, did maintenance religiously, everything. One Saturday, my parents went on a weekend trip, which was rare for them, and left Amber in charge. I had plans to go to a friend's house, but Amber told me to stay because she was going out with her friends and wanted to use my dad's car. I told her she was crazy, that Dad was going to kill her if she took it. But she said nothing would happen, that she was just going to a nearby mall. I went to my friends anyway because, honestly, it wasn't my problem. I came back around 9 at night, and when I got home, I saw the disaster. The Camry was in the driveway with the entire right side destroyed, like the side mirror ripped off, the door dented, scratches everywhere. Amber was inside crying with her friends, trying to console her. When I asked her what happened, she told me she had crashed into a pole in a bar parking lot. Yeah, a bar. 'Cause it turns out she hadn't gone to any mall but to a bar with her friends who were older. She was panicking because she knew that when my parents came back the next day, she was going to be in serious trouble. And she told me, Matthew, you have to help me. You have to say you crashed it. I told her she was completely crazy, that I didn't even have a license yet, that I wasn't going to lie for her. She begged me, cried, told me she'd pay me, that she'd do anything, but I refused. Her friends left and she stayed up all night thinking about what to do. The next day when my parents arrived and saw the car, my dad literally turned red with anger. I had never seen him so furious. He yelled, asking who had crashed his car, and Amber, without hesitating for even a second, pointed at me. She said I had taken the keys while she was sleeping, that I had taken the car without permission, that she didn't even know I had gone out until she heard the noise of the crash. Lie after lie after lie. I tried to defend myself. I told my parents I had been at my friend's house all night, that they could call and confirm, but they didn't listen to me. My dad yelled things at me that I still remember. He told me I was irresponsible, an idiot. How dare I take his car without permission, that I had destroyed his property. I told him to ask the neighbors, that someone must have seen Amber take the car out, but he was so blinded by rage that he didn't want to hear anything. My mom just cried, saying, how could I do that to them, that I had disappointed them, that after everything they had done for me. And I thought, everything they've done for me? Like what? But I couldn't even speak because my dad wouldn't stop yelling. Amber was standing there, quiet, letting them blame me for her mistake. And the worst part is, I saw in her face that she didn't feel even a bit of guilt, not a bit of remorse. After like 2 hours of yelling, my parents told me to pack my things, that I had 1 hour to get out of their house. I couldn't believe it. I was literally in shock. I asked them, are you really kicking me out for this? Without even investigating what really happened? And my dad told me, I don't want to see you again. Go to your grandmother's, let her deal with you because I can't anymore. My mom just nodded, crying, but without defending me, without wondering if maybe, just maybe, their perfect Amber was lying. They called my grandmother, told her I had crashed the car, and that they couldn't have me at home for being rebellious and irresponsible. My grandmother, who lived like 40 minutes away, said I could come stay with her. I packed what I could in a backpack, basically clothes and some personal items, and my dad drove me to my grandmother's house without saying a single word to me the entire way. When we arrived, he didn't even get out of the car. He just told me to get my things out and left. I was 16 years old, barely, and my parents had kicked me out of the house for something I hadn't even done. My grandmother received me with a hug, told me everything was going to be okay, but I was devastated, completely broken inside. That night, I cried more than I had cried in my entire life, not just because of the injustice, but because I finally understood that for my parents, I was never going to be enough, that I was always going to be the bad guy in the story, as long as Amber could do whatever she wanted, without consequences. Living with my grandmother was like arriving in another world. She did listen to me. She believed me when I told her the truth about the car. She told me my parents were wrong, but that sometimes people go blind with their favorites. She was the only person who really loved me without conditions, the only one who saw my value. I started working as soon as I could, first at a convenience store after school, then at a restaurant on weekends. My grandmother didn't have much money. She basically lived off her pension, and I didn't want to be a burden to her, so I worked to help with expenses and to save. Meanwhile, my parents kept giving Amber everything. They paid for her entire college, an expensive private university. They bought her a new car when she turned 19. They sent her to Europe as a graduation gift. And me, you know what they gave me in those years? Nothing. Not a birthday call, not a Christmas message, nothing. It was like I had ceased to exist for them. Sometimes I wondered if they thought about me, if they ever questioned whether they had done the right thing. But over time, it stopped mattering. My grandmother was my family now, and that was enough. I graduated from high school, working 2 jobs, then got a job at a logistics company, starting from the bottom, like in the warehouse moving boxes, and doing inventory. I worked hard, got promoted to coordinator, then to supervisor, and eventually got to a decent administrative position. During all that time, I kept living with my grandmother, saving every penny I could because I had a clear goal in mind, to buy my own house, to have something that was truly mine, something no one could take away from me. Amber, on the other hand, was a total disaster. My parents had bought her a house when she was like 25, a nice house in a decent neighborhood, but she didn't know how to manage money at all. She spent on stupid things, went out to expensive restaurants, traveled constantly, bought designer clothes, and never saved a dollar. She'd get jobs and quit them after a few months because she didn't like them, or because she thought the boss was mean to her, or any excuse. My parents kept giving her money every time she asked, paying her bills when she couldn't cover the mortgage, constantly rescuing her from her bad decisions. I knew all. This because my grandmother still talked to my mom from time to time, although the relationship was tense because of how they had treated me. My grandmother would tell me things occasionally, not because she wanted to make me feel bad, but because I think she wanted me to know I had taken the right path. And she was right, because while Amber wasted everything they gave her, I was building my life with effort and discipline. When I turned 34, I had finally saved enough for a down payment on a house. It wasn't a mansion or anything, but it was perfect for me. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, garage, in a quiet neighborhood. I was so proud of myself, like I had achieved something my parents never thought I could do. When I told my grandmother, she cried with happiness. She told me she was more proud of me than anything in her life and asked if she could help me with something. I told her that her support had been more than enough, that she had given me a home when no one else did, and that was worth more than any money. But she insisted, said she wanted to do something special. So I came up with an idea. I told her we could put her name on the deed of the house along with mine. Not because she was going to put in money. I was going to pay for everything. But as a symbolic gesture, to honor her for everything she had done for me. She got so excited about the idea, and that's what we did. The deed was in both our names, although the bank papers and all the payment records clearly showed that I was the only real owner, the only one paying the mortgage every month. But then, like 6 months after I bought the house, everything started going to hell for Amber. Her house went into foreclosure. Basically, she hadn't paid in months and the bank was going to take it. My parents, who were already retired and living off their savings and pensions, used almost everything they had to get her out of trouble. They paid what she owed the bank, sold the house before it was taken, but the money they got from the sale wasn't enough to cover everything they had spent helping her over the years. They were basically left on the street. Well, not literally. But they had to sell their own house, too, and move to a tiny apartment because they could no longer afford to keep the house where I had grown up. And that's when, after 18 years of not talking to me, of not existing to them, they decided that now they did need me. They called me one day on my cell phone, a number I don't even know how they got, and my mom told me they needed to talk to me. I was so surprised to hear her voice that I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. She asked me how I was. Like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't kicked me out of their house when I was a teenager, like they hadn't abandoned me completely. I told her I was fine, that I had bought a house, and she said, "Oh yeah, your grandmother told us." Then she got to the point. She told me Amber had had financial problems, that they had had to use their savings to help her, that they were now in a difficult situation, and asked me if they could move in with me. Just like that, as if they had a right to ask me that. I was silent for like 10 seconds, processing what I had just heard, and then I told her, absolutely not. She asked me why, said we were family, that I had plenty of space in my house, that it would only be temporary until they got stabilized. I told her they weren't my family, that they had stopped being that when they kicked me out at 16 because of Amber, that for 18 years they didn't care about me and now I didn't care about them either. My mom started crying. My dad grabbed the phone and yelled at me that I was ungrateful, that after everything they had done for me, this is how I repaid them. I told him they hadn't done anything for me, that my grandmother had been the only one who gave me anything, and that if they needed a place to stay, they should ask their favorite daughter. I hung up and blocked them everywhere. My grandmother told me later that they had called her crying, saying I was cruel, that I had no heart, that I was being vindictive. My grandmother told them they were reaping what they sowed, that they couldn't expect me to help them after how they treated me. I thought that would be the end of it, that they would get the message and leave me alone. But no. About 6 months later, my grandmother passed away. It was relatively peaceful. She died in her sleep from natural causes. She was 86 and had lived a full life. I was devastated, obviously, because she had been the only person who really loved me without conditions, the only one who believed in me when no one else did. The funeral was small, just some neighbors, some friends of hers, and to my surprise, my parents and Amber showed up. I didn't talk to them, I didn't want to have anything to do with them, even at my grandmother's funeral. After the service, my dad came up to me and gave me his condolences, said he was very sorry for my loss. I didn't respond, just nodded and walked away. I thought that would be the last time I'd see them. But oh, surprise. 2 weeks later, I received legal documents. They were suing me for the house. Yeah, for my house that I had bought with my money. The lawsuit said that since my grandmother was on the deed of the house and she had passed away, my dad, as her son, had the right to inherit her part of the property, which meant he owned 50% of my house. And as such, they wanted me to sell the house and give them half the value, or give them their share in cash, or let them move in with me. It was the most ridiculous thing I had ever heard in my life. But at the same time, I was scared because technically my grandmother was on the deed, even if it was only symbolically. I hired a lawyer, Monica, who explained the situation to me. Basically, even though my grandmother was on the deed, the fact that I had paid for everything, that I had all the bank receipts, all the proof that I was the only one who had put in money, meant that technically the house was 100% mine. My grandmother's name on the deed was more like a kind of arrangement between us, but legally the money had only come from my account and the property should be considered mine. But we still had to go to court because my parents insisted on their lawsuit. They tried mediation first, where a neutral mediator tries to get both parties to reach an agreement without going to trial. My parents showed up with Amber, who was supposedly there for moral support, and their lawyer who looked as desperate as they did. The mediator explained the situation, reviewed the documents both parties presented, and proposed that I give them like 25% of the house's value to close the case. I told them no way, that I wasn't going to give them a single cent, that the house was mine and only mine. My dad started with the same old speech, that she was his mother, that he had a right to his inheritance, that I was being selfish. I told him I never saw a cent from him in all these years, that my grandmother supported me when they abandoned me, that they had no moral right to anything that had to do with me. Amber had the nerve to say I was being dramatic, that I should let the past go and think about family. I almost got up and left right then, but Monica signaled me to stay calm. The mediation obviously didn't work. I wasn't going to give an inch because I knew I was right. So we went to trial. The day of the trial, I arrived with Monica. All my documents, my bank statements, mortgage payment receipts, everything that proved I had paid every cent of that house. My parents' lawyer presented their case, saying the property was in my grandmother's name too, that therefore it was part of her estate, that my dad, as her son, had the right to inherit. Monica presented all my evidence, explained to the judge that I had put my grandmother's name on the deed as a gesture of love and gratitude, but that, financially, the property was 100% mine. She presented the bank records that showed only my account had been used to pay for everything, from the down payment to every monthly mortgage payment, taxes, utilities, maintenance, everything. The judge asked questions, reviewed documents, listened to testimonies. I testified about my relationship with my grandmother, about how she had taken me in when my parents kicked me out, about why I wanted to honor her by putting her name on the deed. My parents' lawyer tried to make me look bad, asking me things like, "Don't you think your father has the right to inherit from his mother?" I told him yes, but that my house wasn't part of my grandmother's inheritance because she never put money into it. Her name was there only as symbolic recognition. He asked, why then put her name if it didn't mean anything? And I explained that it meant a lot to me emotionally, but didn't change the fact that financially the house was completely mine. My dad also testified, said I was his son, that he had worked his whole life to give me a home. That he couldn't believe I would deny them help in their old age, basically trying to play the victim. Monica, in her cross-examination, asked him directly, "Did you kick Matthew out of your house when he was 16 years old?" He stuttered, said yes, but that it had been for a good reason. "What reason?" Monica asked. He said I had crashed his car. Monica asked if he had proof of that, if he had filed a police report, if he had really investigated what happened. He didn't have convincing answers. Monica asked, "Have you had contact with Matthew in the last 18 years?" He admitted no. "Have you given him financial, emotional, or any kind of support?" No. "Did you know that Matthew was working several jobs while living with his grandmother?" He said yes, because my grandmother had told him. And did you offer to help him in any way? No. Why are you now claiming rights to his property? My dad didn't know what to go. Answer. He just said because legally he could. The judge listened to everything, reviewed all the evidence, and after like an hour of deliberation gave his verdict. He declared that the house was 100% my property. That although my grandmother's name appeared on the deed, the evidence clearly showed that I was the only real owner, the only one who had invested money, and therefore there was nothing to inherit for my dad. Case closed, lawsuit dismissed, and furthermore, the judge ordered my parents to pay the legal costs of the trial, which were not small because they had taken this to the last consequences. When the judge gave the verdict, my dad's face turned red, my mom's completely fell apart, and Amber just looked at the floor. Monica squeezed my shoulder, told me, "Congratulations, we had won." We left the courthouse and my parents tried to catch up with me in the parking lot. My dad yelled at me that I was a monster. How could I do this to them? That they were going to appeal. I told him to do whatever he wanted, to appeal all they wanted, that they were never going to win because the truth was on my side. My mom was crying, saying they just wanted a place to live, that it wasn't fair. I told her what wasn't fair was kicking me out at 16, ignoring me for 18 years, and then showing up only because they needed something from me. Amber tried to say something, but I cut her off. I told her this was all her fault, that if she hadn't lied about the car, maybe things would have been different, but that thanks to her and her inability to take responsibility for her actions, I had lost my family at 16. I told them I never wanted to see them again, that to me they were dead, and I left. They haven't tried to appeal. I guess their lawyer told them they didn't have any chance. I blocked them everywhere again, changed my number, basically disappeared from their lives like they disappeared from mine almost 2 decades ago. I live in my house, the house I bought with my own effort, and every time I walk in I feel proud of myself for not giving up, for having built something despite everything they did to me. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, if I should have been more compassionate, but then I remember everything I went through, all the pain, all the injustice, and I know what I did was right. I didn't owe them anything. And in the end, I defended what was mine. My grandmother would be proud that I didn't let myself get stepped on, that I stood firm. She always told me I was worth more than my parents made me feel, and I think I finally was able to prove it, to them and to myself. The last time I talked to someone who knows them, they told me they're living in a tiny apartment, that Amber still can't hold down a steady job, that they're basically still in the same cycle as always. Part of me feels sorry, but it's a very small part. Most of me feels relief that they're finally out of my life forever. I don't need their approval, I don't need their love, and I definitely don't need their drama. I have my house, I have my job, I have my peace, and that's more than they could give me in my entire life.